gifts. And I'm like, what's going on with your leads?
No, I hear you. I hear you. And I'm excited to share what we're doing here. I'm excited to learn something from you guys too and just kind of talk about that. I think that's been a key feature last year going into this year is just really kind of
Awesome.
leaning into our resources we have at hand, and I think we're all
Love
really
it.
lucky to have each other.
Love it. Let's go.
All right, looks like we're live. Welcome everybody. Sorry for the technical delay there. We had a little bit of technical difficulties as we often do and the interwebs, but we are live. I'm Dylan Nonaka. This is Andrew Warburton, and our special guest Andrew Romero is here. Andrew is the leader of the Romero home team. They did 100 units this past year for over 64 million in volume. He's the number one KW agent in 2020 for sales volume, and the big story and the thing that we want to focus on today is doubling units sold between 21 and 23, and obviously grew the team. And this is why this is called the Team Growth Mastermind, is we want to focus on that and see what people are doing to do that and grow their businesses and scale. And so with that, Andrew Warburton, what do you want to focus on today and get out of this discussion?
Look, the passion that I have, Dylan, and we all have is, how do you not just add on 20% on your team? How do you 2x, 5x, 10x? And all the smart people in the industry say, yeah, you can push harder on what you're doing, but how do you add in additional components that doesn't just improve what you're doing, but double and triple what you're doing? So we've had Dylan, some great discussions with team leaders all around the country. And the idea of this is operationally, what are you doing? Systems wise, what are you doing? And that are making that huge difference. Look, think about it. Every team leader in the country has pretty much the same questions, but in different priorities, which is, how do I get enough leads to feed the team and warrant the fact that the team is splitting with me, right? How do I find enough agents who will get into that program? How do I train them and retain them, right? How do I make a profit in all that process? And then when the leads do come in, where are the agents when the lead comes in? And what's happening in real time with those leads? And what was the actual net result of it? And tracking a CRM isn't enough. And I was sharing with you, this weekend alone on Sunday, 48 new live leads came into our ISAs. $36 million worth of leads came in 6 hours. You have to know, where are the agents? Are they there with the customer? What's happening, right? You handle all of the islands, the Hawaiian Islands, and you make a promise. What does it make? 2 hours? You'll show any home in any island?
Yeah, anywhere in the state in 2 hours. We can get you to any home.
I mean, it's just crazy. So look, Andrew, I personally love Andrew and respect him, and just such a relationship guy. So maybe, Andrew, with some context there, let's look at, we really want to know what you're doing with your team. Every time I see you, and I don't want to do some big long speech about it, but last time you and I were on the Allegiant sports field where the Raiders play, we won't talk about the Raiders, okay? But there's just people around you, right? Anywhere you go, it's the same as Dylan, right? When they see me, they run for the restroom. When they see you, they just gather around like in hordes, right? So relationship is a huge part of what you do. And I know that's kind of a woolly subject. It's not what we said we were going to ask you, but touch on that a little bit. How do you draw these people and retain these people and have such great relationship with them that gives you the retention?
I appreciate that, Andrew. I mean, the first thing I think is just, I tell people this all the time. I just feel like I'm still a server or a bartender. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of those kind of qualities that I kind of relied on to walk out of the building with more tips than the rest of my counterparts. I think a lot of those same skills have just kind of turned into this business. And I know that seems simple and not everybody has that. But when we recruit agents, we really genuinely try to figure out, who are these agents? And we say, hey, there's a lot of different ways to succeed in this business. This is the way that we've carved out. And, not to say that you can't do things differently, but this is kind of the game plan we have. And it starts with laying a successful relationship. And I say it all the time, throw all these relationships into a bag, and then, kind of work off of that bag that you have, and then you're not really focused on when people are transacting, how soon are they transacting. It's just about gathering a bunch of relationships, building them up, and continuing to do that over and over again. And I think that that's just a big part of our business. And we say it all the time, obviously if you're a solo agent and you're struggling to generate those leads, like come to our team and we're going to fix that problem for you. And then on top of that, like we're going to give you coaching, right? And so I don't know if I'm reinventing the wheel or anything like that, but when you start with customer service, customer relations, putting the client first, I think it goes a really long way. And we just kind of start there, building those personal relationships. I think the biggest challenge we've had in that last year is now with all these agreements that we have to get signed. My North Star has been meet anybody, right? Like if they're in your region and they want to have an appointment, go meet them. You don't know, even if they're looking at land, you know, you get people complaining about leads like that, trailers, things like that. Go meet the people, win them over. And we've really had to balance, you know, really had to modify our approach with these changes in the industry, because
you know, let's address that real fast, because Dylan, I think you'll agree, when we started with Flex, we got a whole ton of like leads that were hillside lots for $20,000 you couldn't build on, right? And we learned the same thing as you did, Andrew. And Dylan, you please comment to this, that it really is about getting face to face, because sometimes people start with a crazy dream that they can build a house for 50 grand. They find out they can't, and you find they qualify for $1 million home. So I think what Andrew says is so poignant, that we've been trained the last 50 years, make sure they're pre-qualified. Make sure that you screen them first. Don't waste your time. And that's the reverse of consumerism. Do you agree with that perspective?
Oh, absolutely. We train heavily on don't focus on the information that's attached to the lead. Focus on the person and their intent to want to purchase property. And then let's figure out what that looks like. You guys know this, right? How often does the person actually buy the property that they inquired about on the lead? It's like 0% of the time almost.
5%, so, maybe.
But
you know,
we love to get hung up on that.
I mean, just to build on that, I mean, I think that re-educating your agents that you bring on to the team about that is very important, because I feel like we're always, you know, I think one of the main things we struggle with on this team is, and especially since these touring agreements have become part of our reality, I think something that we deal with is agents really looking for that lead that's trying to transact in the near future and forgetting about those people who might have some reservations, you know, many reservations, as a matter of fact, right? And think about the psychology of somebody who, you know, at least from a Zillow or an online lead perspective, like think about the person who's deciding to finally hit that button. Like they know what happens when they hit that button. Somebody's going to start blowing them up and talk, you know. And so, you know, they weighed the pros and cons of doing that. Now they've done it. And so I think a lot of those people are going to have reservations. I think the challenge now is that, you know, we focus so much on trying to get that touring agreement signed. And I think a new focus of our team has been, okay, well, I think what we noticed over a couple months was there was a lot of like first meetings that weren't happening, right? We were still getting our transactions, but I feel like what was happening was agents were getting resistance on, you know, I don't want to sign this agreement. You know what? I'll call you back later. I'll go find someone else, whatever the case may be. Or I have, now they've thought about it, I do have an agent I might know. I think our agents were leaving those leads behind.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Just forgetting about them. And now we're starting to try to revise that process to, hey, what does that phone call look like a day or two later when you're following up with that person who initially declined you? And we're actually starting to see success with that.
This was one of our like agenda questions, Bud, was what was one of your big takeaways from 2024? And that's it. You really nailed it.
Yeah, that's the big one.
So Dylan, we're kind of glossing over the subject, but to me, you got to remember when and of course you won't remember because you weren't born, but in 1990, when I, you know, first sold, and in 94, one of the top companies in the country put me in Time Magazine, right? You know that, for production. I was one of the top producers in the country. I was 4 years in the industry. Listen to me, 92% of my sales that year were buyer controlled. And we had, because I was a new agent, right? And I wanted to produce in volume. But the point of this was we were trained back then, Andrew, the reverse of what you're saying. Mm-hmm. It was the complete reverse. It was like pre-approve people. Don't just pre-qualify them. Don't. It was the old Mike Ferry stuff, not Tom
Every
Ferry stuff, right?
every barrier
Yes.
to entry, every barrier to entry you can possibly put up, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. Because the most important thing was your time.
Yeah.
And we've come into a consumer-centric world rather than an agent-centric world. Not to say agents aren't important. I'm not saying that. But we're definitely in a consumer-centric environment. And everything that you're saying, Andrew, is let's be consumer-centric. Let's take that risk and meet that person. Unless you meet them, you're not going to find the gold that's in them thar hills, as they used to say.
Yeah, and I say it over and over again, right? Like my business has transformed over the last few years, just like you said, I used to work so many buyers. Now, leading 2 teams in 2 states, it's kind of like, I believe it or not, I'm still in production. I'm trying to focus on listings or just leads in general I want to work with before hopefully peeling back to not being in production. But I go back and I say this over and over again to people, like, and I'll ask you and Dylan, I'm sure you know the right answer. Like, okay, so you're talking to someone, you're potentially going on a listing appointment, like, hey, are you talking to anybody else? Are you interviewing any other agents? Well, yeah, I am. Would you rather hear, Andrew, hey, I'm interviewing my top competitor right after you, or I'm interviewing my niece who has 2 sales under her belt all time, and I say, who would you guys pick that you'd rather like interview against, as your competition?
Let me ask you another question on a different angle here. So here's Dylan sort of outrun us both in terms of production. And he scaled throughout the islands. That's not easy to do. It's not like it's, you got to get on a boat to get to some of these places, right? So
you
it's
can't
not,
even get in a boat. You have to get on a plane.
so you get my point, right? But there's
Yeah.
water,
Are you kidding me with
right?
these things? Yeah.
So you've scaled. And Andrew, let's just ask you this with your team. So everybody understands looking at this, the success you've had, the relationships, how you're converting leads for Zillow and Realtor.com and all these things. Is your goal to scale it? And if so, to scale where? And I ask this question because there's a lot of team leaders who do, let's say, Dylan, 50 to 200 transactions a year. And so you push to maybe go to 75, or maybe from 100 to 125. And some of those team leaders really want to just be there and do that well. That's great. Others want to go, no, I want to be like Dylan. I want to go to 700 a year. Where are you at in that process, Andrew? Where do you want to be, and how long do you strategically plan to get there?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the short answer is, I want to be the best, right? Like, and I think that everybody who's in the Flex program or running teams like us, like, we wouldn't have made that decision if we didn't want to grow and get bigger and scale up. Being in 2 different markets, they're 2 very different markets too. So our primary market over here in Pismo Beach, I mean, it's a smaller market, like, the Central Coast, I mean, the top agents in this area are like us, right? Like, so this team here did 104 transactions. Our Colorado team, which only was running for about 7-8 months, they did about 42, I think.
Wow, that's excellent. That's excellent.
Wow.
So I think that the scalability in both markets has their own challenges, right?
How did you do that? How did you do that? How did you scale from Pismo Beach to Denver? I mean, that's like going from France to Amsterdam, 2 completely different types of people. The only distinction is they're both human beings. I mean, how did you? I'm being stupid, but you get it.
That's
How
funny.
did you do that?
I think that I think the first thing was, well, we applied for expansion in 3
With
different
Zillow?
markets.
With
Yeah,
Zillow.
with Zillow. So like we did that. We tried to expand. So when your metrics are above 125% for a 6-month running, you're eligible for expansion if they want you to, basically. We applied for a couple, NorCal, SoCal, kept getting declined. Denver opened up, or actually Boulder opened up, and they said, hey, is this something you could do? Well, the good news is my extended family's from there.
I want to work for you. Can I get a job application? Because I just came from Mike Dilpretti's hub in Boulder for 2 days.
Sure.
And I called my wife walking in the restaurant district and I said, we're going to move here.
Well, perfect. I've got an agent for you.
Look at you go.
Sorry, Mike. So anyways,
Go on, keep going, keep going.
I think like they're just distinctly different, right? Like over here, I can't stress this enough. It was just the old school way of coming up, right? Like, I did the Mike Ferry Superstars Camp. In 2015, at the end of 2015 is when I got licensed. And we kind of just scaled it up from there, and every year I was able to sell more than the year prior.
Yeah.
All the way up until Flex was offered, and we scaled the team and we came to EXP. So over here, I kind of, I want to think sky's the limit. But just reality, what does a top tier team in this area look like? Like, well, we already have the largest team in this region. So, we're sitting here at 12 agents. It's already the biggest team. So, if I'm really dreaming, I think that we can probably get it to 25, 30 agents.
Because you're in a compressed market.
Exactly. I think with the, and I'm talking about what can we maintain in the long term.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. And so, I think that that's really like a goal, and then we could always expand a little further south, something like that, and kind of grow our market that way.
But you're not talking like a 500 deal a year business out of Pismo because of the fact you're in a restricted market.
Yeah, I just think that would be challenging unless we really opened up like our splits to be more generous. You know what I mean? Like, I think, maybe if we did that, I think that definitely could open the door to more possibilities.
I think this is a good thing to consider for team leaders, and I'll ask you guys if you guys have looked into this, right? And I guess your market's a little bit more complicated than mine because they're island based and I can kind of like pretty much define them pretty easily. But have you looked at market share, like create a goal based off of market share?
I think that that's a great point. So, this last year, isn't this wild? I think we all got involved with Zillow because we wanted to be on the cutting edge of what was going on, right? We wanted to stay ahead of the pack, change our businesses. And I think if I've learned anything in 2024, it was pretty simple. It was like, well, it looks like we're kind of going backwards in like what is profitable. And so, having some meetings with our CEO, Leo, right? Like, it's really opened my eyes to being like, hey, even when I was the #1 agent in the world, it wasn't the year I made the most money, and it wasn't the year I enjoyed it the most. But, being wired the way I am, it's kind of like, I've got to check off like, these milestones that I haven't hit yet, right? So it's kind of hard hearing that in a year of so much transition. So, what does that mean? How are we scaling it? How are we getting more market share? Like, we're the only flex team in this whole region. So for me, it's kind of like, I feel like we are kind of tapping out that kind of roadmap that we've been going down for a long time. I think just online lead generation in general, we're really maxing in this market. Just introducing those same things to Boulder, it seems to be pretty easy. But what we're trying to develop more is just old school. Like, hey, we've got 13,000 leads in our database. Why aren't we retargeting these more? Why aren't we trying to hold more events here that, kind of just farming events that take care of neighborhoods and things like that, kind of old school principles that really kind of like go back to like listing business focused activities. And, if you guys were like me, I'm sure you were, I thought, the technology is really the way the market was going. We were throwing a real knuckleball last year. And that's really changed to this like older school approach being the more profitable approach. So as I do that, yeah, we're looking at different neighborhoods. How can we control this neighborhood, and control the listings in this neighborhood? So those are the questions we're starting to ask ourselves. Whereas like Boulder, being in Colorado in a bigger metropolis, like what we're noticing is people are just more open to being on a flex team and working online leads. And this is the way it is because, it's been around in this market a really long time. Whereas like over here, we're the only show in town doing that.
So Andrew, Dylan, can I bring up something on this? So what we're talking about here is scale, right? and I'll put a challenge to you, Andrew, as a young man. I bet if I said to you, you can run not small, but a medium-sized company in two places and make X, or you can run something 5 times bigger and make X minus 20%, but be doing 1,000 transactions a year, but you're making X minus 20%. I don't want you to lie to me. So I have a great lie detector. It's right there. I'm looking at your eyes. If I gave you that choice, choice one, run a medium to small size team and make X, or do 1,000 deals a year and make X minus 20%, but it's still plenty of money to live and thrive, which would you choose?
God, I'd like to think I'm the second person, but I think the stats show I'm the first person.
Look at Dylan.
So,
he sees that trap opening up right in front of you.
I said, I don't have to answer that question theoretically. I know I'm the second person. So
yeah.
See, and I have two. I like number two. Let's go number two.
I think Dylan and I just going back to how you, myself, and Dylan all kind of connected on a level. Is I think we notice those things about each other just by interacting with each other on a leadership basis in our meetings. Like, we notice those qualities in other people. And I want to sprinkle as much Dylan and Andrew on my business as I possibly can. I really feel strongly that we're all just like an amalgamation of the people that have imprinted on you, and you're just a sprinkle of yourself.
For sure.
With a sprinkle of yourself on top. And I'd like to think that I tried to learn from. I remember getting in the business very first moment, and I wasn't in a great situation, but, I tried to take everything from the people that, were willing to help. And then I remember going on to my first team. My first team was she turned 80 while I was on her team.
Wow.
And she was farming out a trilogy. I don't know if you guys know what trilogies are, but yeah, they're like master plan, golf.
Yeah.
$1 million homes everywhere. And she's, selling 30, 40, I think even back then, maybe even close to 50 homes a year. And she swore by her newsletter, I'm just farming this newsletter. And she used to not even work leads that weren't in that community, just that community. She wouldn't go outside the gates across the street. She'd refer those leads out. And so I'm not necessarily saying that I'm completely copying that business model, because I'm not. But I'm definitely taking the wins that I noticed while I was there that were effective, that really were good aspects of her business, and implementing them into my business.
You said something really interesting. By the way, Dylan, I'm in a talkative mood today because I drank a NOS on the way here to the studio. So if you need to shut me up, just go time out, Andrew, enough. You said a couple of things that really caught my interest, okay? You said, Andy, we handle these leads. We're measuring how much scale we can do. There's maybe more profitable business and more enjoyable business in the more traditional ways. And, you just mentioned newsletters and events and so on and so forth. So may I suggest this, that for people who want to grow, how can I say it? Let's say, okay, let's take it this way. Take it out of real estate for a minute. Let's say you love to make sandwiches, right? And you want to do this specialty sandwich with a fricassee of this and a fricassee of that and all this, right? But, how do you sell those sandwiches when you live right opposite a high school, right? And they want tuna and tomato, and they want barbecue rib sandwich, right? The kids don't know about fricassee yet, right? So what you do is you build out your store, because the local high schools are referring you so many kids, you need standard sandwiches, right? But in doing that, those kids graduate from high school. When they graduate from high school, they, get a nice girlfriend, get a nice boyfriend. They want nicer sandwiches. And so you start to sell a specialty line. And gradually that specialty line grows and grows and goes. There's more profit in it. You actually enjoy that more. And you're left with a business choice. Do I keep the BLTs or do I let them go altogether? So now bring that over to real estate. that if you like, the high school is Zillow. They're feeding us a ton of kids coming out of school. We take those kids, first time home buyers, all that stuff, right? And help them. But really what you like to do is that more personal type of business. The challenge is this. I think that's a good analogy. The challenge is this, Andrew, is for people who come on this call, people we meet around the country, they want to grow, they want money now, they want to grow now. And if you just focus on what's old, I'll do my newsletter, I'll knock on doors, I'll do a movie in the park. The growth is so slow, your bills catch up on you before you do enough movies in the park to get enough people. So it's like, and you just said it, Andy, we have 16,000 people in our database. So these partnerships like with Zillow and Realtor.com and Chris Heller and so on and so forth, these partnerships give us this huge base of people that we can feed the machine with. But you have to have parallel these other more traditional methods that you can now integrate into that big base. In other words, if you don't start with a big flow, you're going to be driven out of the business before you get to the specialty. That's a long speech, but do you agree with that perspective?
You know, I think mostly I do. And how could I not, right? Look at the team you guys are running, right? Like, you know, how could I refute that? I guess what my challenge is these online lead revenue sources that we've all been working. I think I've seen, like, on a personal level, the quality of that business just kind of tick down, tick down, tick down. So, like, I think that what I'm saying now is not anything groundbreaking. I think getting that roster size bigger is very, very important, right? Like, and that's something that I have to grow in as a person. I'm noticing, as crazy as it is, because I have a brand established here where I'm at, it seems to be kind of easier in Colorado, where we're a little more unknown, right? Because people are more open to this idea of doing business on a lower split, you know, kind of doing things that way. So I think the same thing can be right in two different scenarios, right? Like, or two different things can be right in two different scenarios, right? Like, you know, we've been really pushing this market in Pismo Beach. I think I'm seeing as far as I want that new tech to go. And the way I want to add to that business is through these older school methods, you know.
Got it.
Is that going to be slower rolling? And yes, but at the same time, it's going to be more profitable. Business 101, don't do it if you're not making money, right? Like, so I think that I'm really trying to incorporate those things while sticking on our, like, you know, our up to date, our new tech, you know, getting more ISAs involved in the business, while watching our burn rate too, you know, keeping an eye on that, because some of these expenses we're acquiring, like, we can't do anything about it. Like, you know, those decisions are being made higher up behind our backs. So, you know, when those decisions are made, we have to kind of look at our bottom line and kind of, what kind of margin am I okay working on? And so, you know, I think maybe that's my own limitations, you know, that, like, my profit margin, I want to keep pretty healthy. And some people are comfortable working off a smaller profit line. And that's okay. You know, like, I think that, and I've said it in our meetings with Zillow, I think Zillow's done a tremendous job of, like, collecting the top 400 teams in the country, you know, with growth mindset and people who just want to be the best, and put us all into the same room, you know, which is amazing, right? Because in that sense, like, you know, look at what we're doing now, and I think we're going to be able to achieve new heights together.
Yeah, I think so too.
At the same time, you know, I think that this desire to be the best, this desire to be number one, is, like, kind of being controlled by them too. You know, like they are kind of, you know, hanging that carrot in front of our face a little bit. And I think, you know, can we get that carrot? Are we going to get it? You know, we keep reaching for it and it's just ahead of us. And I don't know if more transactions, you know, like, there's an award sitting behind me that's #1 agent for closed volume, AKA I made the most money, right? #3 in units, right? I wish it said 1 on both, right? Like, I wish it was #1, but it's #1, #3. And so,
there's engravers that can change those, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, for me, it's like, it's hard because I want to make more money. You know, like, yes, I want to be the best, but I want to increase my margins too.
So can we real quick just take it, Dylan? You comment on this too with Andrew, would you? Because I know I'm being a little controversial here today, but
You're good.
look, so you both can make those decisions you just talked about. Why? Because you have money. So when you have money, because you've succeeded, right? Because you have money, you can do things that not only are slow, Andrew, but could be unprofitable, right? Sometimes when you go
Absolutely.
into, yeah, think about, I'm sorry to date myself, but postcard campaigns. You send out 250,000 postcards. You can lose money for 3 months,
Oh yeah.
right? However, we build teams with people who the individuals may or may not have that money. Most people that we speak to need to make money at the slowest 60 days from now. So we
Hmm.
got to put them on a fast track. The only way we can put them on that fast track is create these lead funnels and on the seller or buyer, yeah? And on those lead funnels, they're going to pay these huge splits, but it's going to put money in the pocket. They're going to make their car payment. They're going to send Johnny to school. They're going to make their house payment. So that's a different decision parameter than leading. I mean, Dylan's team is huge, and we're all trying to catch him. But and I'm not just saying it to flatter him. It's just fabulous what he's done. It's not like he's done it for 30 years. It's just amazing. But let me stay on the point. The point is, we bring in team members. They need to make money now, and
Yeah.
I see us as the funnel in this relationship to say to those families, yeah, you work hard with us for 60 days. We can move your bar. We can raise the bar for you. We can bring money into your. See, I get emotional about that. That's the pastor in me. That's really, you can't make everybody like you, Andrew. They're not going to be. But you
Yeah.
can put money on their kids' food table.
So I'm really proud of our average per agent production. The average agent on my team sells 9 homes.
Yeah, that's fabulous.
So, I mean, our roster isn't as big as other rosters, but I think we teach good sales skills, which, you know, I mean, Dylan knows, I've said it a million times. I can give you the playbook. We can give you the highest intent leads that you can possibly meet. Can't make you want it, right? Like, so that's why so much of my coaching is just developed around getting someone motivated and inspired. Because I mean, I can't say it enough. Even my most motivated, successful agents, they burn out, they get exhausted. They will cherry pick when they get exhausted. And how do you do better than that? My answer is get your roster bigger, Andrew. You're not doing a good enough job of
Yeah.
recruiting, right? Like, so like that's genuinely like on me as a team leader to kind of like notice those pain points, look at myself as a leader, like, why are my agents getting burned out? How's our lead rotation? Like, am I being too hard on the people who are struggling with conversions? Like, I think sometimes there's not a lot I can do about that because
Right.
things are going. But like, am I being too hard on them? And they need more opportunities, new, fresh opportunities. I have to look at all those aspects when I'm trying to maximize the potential with what we've got. Now, not to say I can't. But getting back to how do we make them 9 deals a year? I say it all the time, and I mentioned it before. I would way rather go on a listing presentation against the number 1 or number 2 agent in town next to us, like, as opposed to somebody's niece, right? Like, because those people have a relationship that's really hard to break. And sometimes your standard,
Yeah, I love
hey,
that.
well, you don't want to mix business with family, like some of this
Yeah.
right over somebody's head and be like, yeah, dude, I don't want the drama of like. So when I take a step back from that and I say, how do I start building relationships like that, to where the relationship I've made with this client is so strong, they don't want to work with their niece that has a real estate license, like, I mean, I think that those are just questions we've got to constantly be asking ourselves, like,
Andrew, to wrap it up, what would you like everybody who views this? We're going to email this out to 20 or 30,000 people. How would you like people to contact you? Obviously, if they're in Boulder or Pismo Beach area, you'd like them to reach out to you. Tell us what you'd like people, after they've watched you and respected you here, how they'd like to reach out to you.
well, hopefully they respect me after this. I don't know, but I think that we'll see. So if anybody wants to reach out to us, you can find us on Instagram, right, at Andrew Romero 7. We also have at Romero Home Team. anybody's, at any time, feel free to reach out. My number, my contact information is everywhere. So it's very easy to find out how to get a hold of me. We have a grand opening event coming up in a couple months. I'm going to try to get you guys out here for us. We have an office that we've put a lot of time and effort into kind of getting where it's at right now. Once we get some of our signage, we're going to be having that. We're going to be doing coaching, all kinds of stuff. It's going to be a great event. So it's kind of still TBD on the date, but it's probably looking like it's going to be around April.
We appreciate you a lot. And I think everybody watching this, Dylan, needs to understand we all have clients that go to Hawaii. How the heck do they reach out to you? Well, of course, you just put Dylan Nonaka into Google, right? That's it.
I'm the only one. Yeah, I'm easy to find.
And you're recruiting all the time as well, constantly looking for agents who want to work?
Well, I think we've talked about this before, and this is another, I think we had a really good discussion about this is attraction versus recruitment. I mean, we really don't recruit. I mean, we wait for agents to come to us and raise their hand and say, I like what you're doing. And what Andrew was talking about per agent productivity, I think that, for all team leaders listening to this, something that you need to think about in your value proposition is it's not the leads or it's not the money you're going to make, or it's not all of these like kind of technical things. It's like, what are we going to do to provide you with opportunity to be productive? And that's a big one. I think that if you look at the analysis and you run numbers with teams, good teams versus the market, you're going to see a huge difference in productivity. And that's something I'm leaning into this year is really, I told telling the team that this year, our goal is to be not the number one team in a market. We've already done that, been there, done that. But I want to be by far the highest productive organization in the country, right? I want to have agents that are more highly productive than anywhere else because we're providing them with opportunity, with leads, with training, with coaching, all those different things. And so I think that's a big one, going forward, is for all of us to think about is what are we doing from a messaging standpoint to talk about opportunity and productivity versus money or income. That stuff will come. That's a side effect, I think, of a good amount of opportunity.
Well, what was the number one thing you did to get to that point, Dylan, to be at a spot where most of your recruiting is reactive? I mean,
I tell you what, let's do this. Let's do the next Team Growth Mastermind. Interview this guy that I know, Dylan Nonaka, and let's just grill the guy and find out how do you get to be like you. What do you say, Andrew?
I mean, I would love it. I would love to be the interviewer in that scenario.
Well, then join me next time, and we'll interview Dylan, because people don't realize how much business he does. Dylan, because I don't want to squeeze you in the last 2 minutes of this podcast. We need to interview you and grill you, brother. So it's coming, right? You're on the agenda.
2 weeks sounds good. Deal.
And let's just wish everybody a prosperous 2025. Yeah.
Thanks for your time, Andrew, and your insight, man. That was awesome. I think, going back to that old school stuff is just such a huge point that needs to be always driven back, is at the end of the day, with all the internet and all of the AI, relationships are still the core of what we do. And I love that about you.
I've hired so many ISAs, guys. Like, I can't tell you how many ISAs have come and gone off my team. You just can't replace just the, building those relationships and having real conversations with people. Are there great, objection handlers out there? Sure. Just get back to hey, how can I get this person to like me? Go back to you're serving them a drink at the bar. How's this guy going to tip you? Most people tip $1, if you pour them a drink. How are you going to get someone to tip you, somewhere between $2 and $5 on this drink? If you can keep that at the forefront of your mind when you're having these tough conversations with people, that's how you're going to convert better. I mean, plain and simple.
So here's the slogan for 2025, guys: get tipped in 25.
Yeah.
Listen, I appreciate, guys, thank you so much. And Dylan, I love doing this Team Growth Mastermind with you. You're an awesome individual, both of you.
Mutual.
Cheers. See y'all soon. Yeah. Thanks everybody for joining us. Appreciate it.
Have a good one, guys.